It's 1:30 p.m. in Lagos, same time in London, and we're bringing you markets, insights, and analysis on Business Incorporated live from Channels Television. And here's what's coming up on the program. Africa Finance Corporation to transform petroleum product transportation in Uganda. And Egypt's gold reserves rise by 24% in the first half of 2023. And Ethiopian Airlines adds London Gatwick to its UK network. Welcome to the program. It's the first day of the week, and thank God it's Monday. I'm Will Ebong. Let's kick off with market numbers from Africa, where it's mostly negative sentiments at intraday. We see the Nigeria's NGX down 0.02%, albeit marginally, settling still at the 65,000 level. We see South Africa's GSE down 0.6%. So let's go over to Egypt and see how they did at intraday. 0.76% up. And Kenya closed Friday's session in the red. Let's now scoot over to the Middle East and see how they performed at intraday. We see them also trading with mostly negative sentiments in the Middle East. We have the Abu Dhabi down 0.05%. Dubai index, however, was up 0.13%. And we see the Saudi's exchange down 0.27%, same as the Qatari index, also in the red. We shift our attention now to what could have led to a major catastrophe, an error at an airport in San Diego, California in the U.S. that almost had two planes crash over the weekend. It's a near-miss plane situation that shines a light on current troubles to regulate and oversee air traffic there. Lars Alter with Deutsche Welle in Berlin has been following this story. Lars, what exactly happened?
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was what's called a near-miss situation. Just before noon on Friday, an air traffic controller at San Diego International Airport cleared a Cessna Citation business jet to land on a certain runway, even though a Southwest Airlines flight had already been told to taxi onto the same runway and await instructions to depart. Now, that plane was a Boeing 737 with lots of passengers on board and crew, obviously, and the error brought the planes dangerously close together. Now, the airport's automated surface surveillance system alerted the controller about the developing situation, and the controller directed the Cessna to discontinue landing. Long story short, the Cessna passed over the top of the Southwest airplane by about 30 meters, and no one got hurt. All good so far, but it was such a dangerous situation that the U.S. Regulating Air Traffic Authority, the FAA, sent a team to San Diego to investigate how this could have even happened.
You know, Lars, this is not the first time we've heard of a situation like this. What's the problem these days?
Yeah, that's right. In fact, this is the 7th time this year that the U.S. has seen a near miss and averted a plane disaster by just a few meters. And often the situation went exactly the same. One plane coming in, another one leaving, and the air traffic controller in a situation where he or she didn't recognize that too many things were going on at the same time. Authorities are, and I think you can say that, they're just shocked. The FAA's chief operating officer says, and I quote, "There is no question that we are seeing too many close calls." The FAA issued a safety alert to airlines, pilots, and everyone involved in operations, citing the need for continued vigilance and attention to mitigation of safety risks. But all the letters and all the alerts will not change one fact that might just be key to the problem here. The FAA is short-staffed. During the pandemic, airlines had to cut flights, air traffic was down, and everybody cut staff, pilots, crews, but also air traffic controllers. Now, after the pandemic, air traffic has come roaring back. We've seen record numbers of flights, but not all important jobs have been filled, since right now there are 1,200 fewer air traffic controllers at work than 10 years ago. However, flight numbers, of course, have gone up.
But what does this all mean to the companies involved? I mean, was there a reaction in the market?
Well, there were a number of companies involved in these incidents over the past few months, but there was no backlash, no criticism, not a drop in stock price, and for good reason. The airlines in these particular incidents are not to blame. Southwest Airlines has been involved in a few of these near-miss situations, but at least twice with a plane that has been cleared to take off. And then it didn't, fortunately. Another company involved, FedEx, almost crashed with a Southwest plane just a few weeks ago, but also just as an incoming plane that had been cleared for landing. So those companies have not seen any direct consequences after these incidents, but internally, of course, they are worried for their crew and for their equipment, and they have all said they are cooperating with authorities investigating the incidents.
Rightly so, Lars. They have the right to be concerned and worried about their crew. Thank you so much, Lars, for that update. And we head over now to the UK, where a new survey shows employers are fighting to keep workers with 5% pay rises over the coming year. That's the highest level since 2012. Juliana Olayinka joins me from London. Hi, Juliana. Is this counter-offer strategy by employers to retain staff a sustainable venture, seeing that the economy is biting hard and is still expected to decline?
Good afternoon, Will. That's a good question, and perhaps that is the reason why HR executives are suggesting that over the next 12 months they're going to have to increase the pay for beleaguered staff in the UK by at least 5%. Well, that's according to the results that we have seen from the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development, who've been speaking to HR execs, basically trying to ascertain what the confidence is among staff at the moment. And it's pretty low, which is the reason why, despite the fact that the government have tried to negotiate with people, there are still a significant number of industrial actions taking place in the UK at the moment, including junior doctors who have been striking since Friday. I think one of the reasons why Chancellor Jeremy Hunt and the Conservative government have been so cautious about increasing pay above a certain level is because of inflation. Now, it has come down from some of those 40-year highs we saw at the beginning of the year, where inflation in this country was at above 10%, but it is still quite high at 7.8%. We are expecting inflation data for the month of July on Wednesday. The consensus is it would have fallen to about 6.8%, but still it's relatively high if you compare it to comparable economies. So in one hand, it's good. Of course, if you are a beleaguered worker doing the job of about 6 people in your team, certainly you do want a pay rise, particularly because we know that the cost of living is so high. But in order to combat inflation, the British government do need to keep an eye on these inflated wage packets, because of course once people have more money, people spend. Once you spend, demand goes higher, and inflation of course goes accordingly too.
Yes, he's saying that we're not trying to, get from frying pan to fire, stoking the fire. When we're trying to, bring inflation down, we don't want anything taking it back up. So how is the first trading day in the markets looking like at intraday?
Not great, actually. The UK Blue Chip Index is performing in the red. It is a key week for UK economic data. I just mentioned that we're getting inflation figures on Wednesday. Tomorrow, really important as well, that unemployment data. That goes exactly into what we were just discussing, because, of course, when the ONS release unemployment data, they also get to look at bonuses and public sector and private sector pay. Is that going to weigh in on data on Wednesday? We'll just have to wait and see, but investors are not too happy at the moment. The all-share is down 0.23%. The FTSE 100 down 2 at 0.25%. And the FTSE 250, the domestic market, that's down by a smidgen at 0.05%. In the currencies market, the British pound is currently trading up against the US dollar by 0.12%, trading up 2 against the euro by 0.07%. And the British pound at intraday is trading up against the Japanese yen by 0.22%. Well,
not looking good, Juliana. Thank you so much for that update. And now we move over to Asia, where markets fell on Monday, led by Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index. The index tumbled almost 2%, dragged down by basic materials and consumer stocks. The real estate sector also saw a sell-off. Now, mainland China's stocks were also in negative territory. We see Japan's Nikkei 225 down 1.27%, South Korea in the red as well, 0.79%, and the Hong Kong Hang Seng Index I mentioned earlier was down 1.66%. Let's see what other markets were doing. Shanghai, like I mentioned, China was down 0.34%, and in Australia is beating red 0.86%. Now we move over to stock futures in the U.S., where it was slightly up in early trade on Monday as Wall Street looked to shake off a rough start to August. Futures tied to the S&P 500 climbed 0.2%, and those for the Nasdaq on 100 gained about 100 points. That's a 0.36% up. We see the Dow Jones up 0.15% at 35,400 points. And these moves come after stocks have struggled to sustain their rally in the late summer. Last week, the S&P 500 and Nasdaq Composite fell 0.31% and 1.9% each. It was the Nasdaq Composite's first 2-week losing streak of the year. The Dow Jones Industrial Average, however, gained 0.62% for its fourth positive week in 5. Meanwhile, retail sales data from July are due out on Tuesday. Also, investors are expecting earnings reports from Target and Walmart. The earnings reports are coming after inflation reports last week showed that prices have eased from their post-pandemic peak, but are still above the Federal Reserve's 2% target. Now, oil prices eased early on Monday after 7 straight weeks of gains supported by tightening supply on OPEC Plus output cuts. Brent crude futures fell 29 cents to $86.52 a barrel, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude was at $82.95 a barrel. Analysts say oil may be range-bound this week as China's sluggish economic recovery and a stronger U.S. dollar could depress prices, but they're also optimistic OPEC Plus would do whatever it takes to keep supply tight and stabilize markets. Meanwhile, supply cuts by Saudi Arabia and Russia are expected to erode oil inventories in the rest of the year, potentially driving prices even higher, according to the international agency. Now, gold prices fell to their lowest level in more than 5 weeks in early trade on Monday as the dollar and bond yields strengthened ahead of the U.S. Federal Reserve's July meeting minutes this week that could guide expectations on future interest rates. Now, spot gold was down 0.1%, hitting its lowest level since July the 7th. U.S. gold futures, however, also slipped 0.1% to $1,944.10. Now, among other precious metals, we're seeing spot silver falling 0.4% to $22.59 an ounce, having matched a low last seen on July the 6th. Platinum dropped 0.8% to $905.04, while palladium was steady at $1,292.97. Now, in the month of August, South Africa pays tribute to Women's Month, a time to reflect on the courageous women who fought against the oppressive apartheid laws, as well as the remarkable progress achieved since then. The Consul General of the People's Republic of China in Johannesburg, Tang Jongdeng, delivered a keynote speech at the South Africa-China's Women's Forum. The event was collaboratively organized with the Africa-China's Women's Association. During the event, women representing various sectors came together to engage in discussions about a range of social challenges that women encounter. We'll see this report just right after the break. Do stay with us. Welcome back. Now we're talking about South Africa, where it's Women's Month, and they're celebrating their women, and they're also showcasing the skills those women have and the potentials they have to bring into their society. Our South Africa correspondent Innocent Samosa gives us this report.
The economy of South Africa owes much of its success to the significant contributions made by women throughout its history. A vast array of exceptional South African women have played pivotal roles, with notable figures including Winnie Mandela, Lillian Ngoyi, and Albertina Sisulu. These historical icons were fervent political activists who courageously fought against the apartheid regime.
And the contributions of women.
In another setting, the Consulate General of China in Johannesburg has chosen to celebrate women under the theme Women Together for a Shared Future. In focus are crucial topics such as BRICS cooperation from a woman's perspective and empowering independent and self-sufficient women.
Our two governments have engaged in dialogues and discussions on issues related to gender equality, women's empowerment, and so on.
A persistent concern that has endured over time is the ongoing struggle faced by women in business. However, these resolute women remain committed to actively stand against it.
If one look at the economies, both of South Africa, I'm not so sure about that of China, but certainly of BRICS countries more generally when it comes to women's representation in management, women's access to capital, women's ownership of firms, it still remains a challenge.
Women can be key role players in industry and development.
A distinguished panel of women engaged in a comprehensive dialogue addressing the obstacles and remedies pivotal to making substantial contributions within a predominantly male-dominated environment.
I think with any industry, be it being an architecture, being an engineer, being in the attorney's profession, if you are firstly black, for me, and secondly, if you're female, even if you're a non-black female, it's actually quite difficult. I can recall for me to find articles was a challenge on its own. I don't think we have the resources that our other counterparts have to kickstart our careers. So I think if we provide the support and the structure for upcoming attorneys, then we are obviously going to produce high caliber attorneys.
Navigation is with effort, and so is with anything else that you do in life. I think it's about keeping your head above the waters and understanding that although the people in the room don't always look and sound like you, that you have valuable information to convey, that you have an input that you can give, and remembering that always kind of keeps you on top of your craft.
It is worth noting that this celebration coincides closely with the upcoming BRICS Summit. From Johannesburg, South Africa, Innocent Simos, Channels Television News.
Very interesting there. Now we see since the recent coup now in Niger, the coup d'etat in Niger early this month, we have seen several disruptions from border closures to shutting down of airspace. One of the areas one may have to examine is the planned Trans-Saharan gas pipeline. The TSGP is a proposed natural gas pipeline that would span a distance of over 4,000 kilometers, transporting gas from Nigeria across Niger to Algeria, Tunisia, and Europe, and is estimated to cost about $13 billion. There are fears this coup in Niger may impact negotiations. Joining me is Joe Nwakwe, oil and gas analyst and partner at Zera Advisory. Good afternoon, Mr. Joe. It's good to have you on the program. Good afternoon, Joe. Please, could you unmute your mic? Joe, can you hear me? Could you unmute your mic? Okay, so while we wait for that bit of a technical issue, we go over to Uganda, where the Africa Finance Corporation has announced plans to invest in Mahathi Infra Uganda Limited, one of East Africa's largest oil and gas downstream players. The AFC's $95.25 million investment will finance the construction of 2 self-propelled barges for operation on Lake Victoria, providing a more efficient and less carbon-intensive alternative to traditional trucking. The financing will also support enabling infrastructure, including 14 petroleum storage tanks, 20 truck loading bays, a jetty, and a parking lot with a capacity of 50 trucks. These will reduce cost, transport time, as well as carbon emissions. Uganda is a net importer of petroleum products, and the project will have a significant impact on the country's economy. I think now we have Mr. Joe Nwakwe, who's going to be speaking on the potential possibility of a delay in negotiations for the Trans-Saharan gas pipeline. as a result of the Niger coup. Mr. Nwakwe, it's good to have you on the program. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay, so Mr. Nwakwe, concerning the Trans-Saharan pipeline, where are we at? Because I know it's not kicked off yet. Where are we at on the negotiation table? And is there the slightest possibility that the coup could derail or delay the negotiations?
Yeah, I think the project has been on for quite a bit. You know, they had an MOU initially some couple of years ago, and that has been reviewed. I understand last year they signed up the three nations, Algeria, Niger, and Nigeria, signed another MOU mid last year. And so they're going to go back to the earlier feasibility studies that were done. And I believe that's been reviewed. And thereafter, they will start doing some front-end work for that project. That's my understanding of the current status. In terms of what the coup, whether or not that will impact on that schedule is yet to be seen. My sense is that it may not. I think that these issues will be resolved, and they'll get back to developing the project along the lines of the MOU they've signed.
Okay, so let's talk about the possibility of a delay in negotiations and the MOU that was signed recently. If there is a delay, or even if it gets to the point that it could be cancelled if there's a breakdown in dialogue, what do you see happening?
Well, just like all things, the project is not going to happen very soon, even if there were no delays. It takes some years to get a project this scale off the ground. So what would happen? We're already looking at the Nigeria-Morocco line. So maybe we'll just focus effort and attention on getting that off the ground as well. And I think that has in terms of timing, that's moving along faster than the Trans-Saharan gas pipeline.
So do you think, you mentioned the Morocco line now, what is the next step for that? What is holding that back? What do we need at the moment?
That's ongoing. I hear they've done some right-of-way studies and all that. So that's an ongoing project. But like again, these are not quick wins. It takes time to develop projects of this scale.
Okay, so thank you so much, Mr. Joe Nwakwe, oil and gas analyst and partner Zero Advisory, for sharing those insights, at least keeping us up to date and bringing us up to speed as to where we are with the Trans-Saharan gas pipeline project.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Now, Egypt's gold reserves rose by 24% to reach 125.8 tons in the first half of this year, lifting the country's rank to 5th in the Arab world and 31st globally. This comes as the Central Bank of Egypt seeks to enhance the balance of its international reserves by diversifying it to support the local currency. According to experts, gold is an important means of hedging against currency fluctuations, especially in the light of geopolitical developments and global crisis after the Russian-Ukrainian war. Now, in Ethiopia, Ethiopian Airlines, one of the largest network operating carrier in Africa, says it is stretching its reach to Gatwick in the UK. The airline says the new service, which starts from November the 21st this year, will offer a direct flight between London Gatwick 3 times a week. The service will complement the airline's daily non-stop A350 flights from London Heathrow to Addis Ababa. And that's it on Business Incorporated. Thanks for watching. I'm Will Ibong. See you tomorrow.